Hello and welcome to English for Everyone, where we practice real-life American English. Today we're going to clear up some confusing plural forms, so let's get started. Let's watch a clip.
Do you know the plural form of these words? Shrimp, deer, dozen.
Okay, one shrimp and two shrimp, one deer and two deer, but dozen? That's different. So with these animals, you can say one shrimp and two shrimp. We don't say two shrimps. The same for deer. We say one deer and two deer. We do not say two deers. And keep watching until the end of this video to practice more with those confusing words. But dozen? Dozen is different because we do say dozens. Let's take a closer look. The word dozen is used to talk about numbers, like these words: 100, 1,000, million, and billion. They all follow the same pattern. Example, if I have a number, it's in the singular form. Example, 1 dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen. There are 3 dozen people. But if I don't have a number, I say dozens. There are dozens of people. So we see how we can use the word dozens. And let's learn some mistakes to avoid. I cannot say 3 dozens people. And I cannot say 3 dozen of people. There's no of when I use a number. But if I eliminate the number, then I say there are dozens of people. The idea? 24? 36? I don't know exactly. But if I say there are 3 dozen people, then I'm talking about 36 people. Let's practice. Are there 3 dozen people? That's right, there are 3 dozen people. Are there dozens of people? That's right, there are dozens of people. So now let's see how this structure works the same for other numbers, like 100. Example, there are, in the past there were. There were 300 people. I cannot say there were 300s people, and I cannot say there were 300 of people. Only there were 300 people. But if I eliminate the number, I can say there were hundreds of people. I put the S on the word and I use of. There were hundreds of people. The idea, I don't know exactly how many, but maybe 2, 3, 400. That's the idea. Let's practice in the past. Were there 300 people? That's right, there were 300 people. Were there hundreds of people? That's right, there were hundreds of people. Let's practice with 1,000. Were there 3,000 people? That's right, there were 3,000 people. Were there thousands of people? That's right, there were thousands of people. So remember, I cannot say there were 3,000s people, and I cannot say there were 3,000 of people. There were 3,000 people. Or there were thousands of people. The idea, I don't know exactly how many. But we're talking 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Let's practice with million. Were there 3 million people? That's right, there were 3 million people. Were there millions of people? That's right, there were millions of people. Also with billion, were there 3 billion people? That's right, there were 3 billion people. Not billions, singular form. There were 3 billion people. When you use the number, use the singular form. But if I eliminate the number, billions, billions of people. Were there billions of people? That's right, there were billions of people. So we see these two words do not work the same. Deer and dozen do not follow the same plural structure. You can say 1 deer and 2 deer, but we do not say deers. Or a dozen, if you have a number, you say 2 dozen, 3 dozen. If you eliminate the number, then you say dozens. Talking about an approximate number, dozens of people. Today we're doing a very important video. We're going to learn all the irregular plurals that you need to know. And there are a lot of them, so let's get started. First, let's talk about the nouns that you don't have to change. The singular is the same as the plural. For example, aircraft. You can have one aircraft or two aircraft. We don't say aircrafts. There's no S. The singular and the plural are the same. Example, this is an aircraft carrier. An aircraft, a lot of aircraft, land on the aircraft carrier. And the aircraft also take off from the aircraft carrier. Let's practice. What is this? Is this an aircraft carrier? That's right, this is an aircraft carrier. So remember, aircraft refers to airplanes. Let's practice. Do the aircraft land on the aircraft carrier? That's right, the aircraft land on the aircraft carrier. We're talking about plural, many aircraft. Don't say aircrafts. And do the aircraft also take off from the aircraft carrier? That's right, the aircraft also take off from the aircraft carrier. Now let's talk about this word. This word is swine. You're talking about pigs. Well, I can have one pig or two pigs, but I cannot say one swine or two swines when talking about pigs. We just say swine. It's the singular and the plural. We don't change it. Example, swine flu. Swine flu is a virus that comes from pigs. Or I can say swine flu is a virus that comes from swine. Not swines, just swine. It's the plural form too. Let's practice. What is swine flu? Is it a virus that comes from swine? That's right, swine flu is a virus that comes from swine. It comes from pigs. It's the same thing. Our next word is this. This animal is called a moose. You can have one moose and two moose. It doesn't change. We don't say mooses. It's one moose and two moose. And there are a lot of moose in Alaska. They're walking around everywhere up there. There are a lot of moose in Alaska. Let's practice. Are there a lot of moose in Alaska? That's right, there are a lot of moose in Alaska. I hear it's a real problem. Now let's talk about these animals. These are sheep. One sheep, two sheep. You cannot say sheeps. The singular is the same as the plural. And if you can't get to sleep, what do? You count sheep. One sheep, two sheep, three sheep, and so on. Let's practice. What do you do if you can't get to sleep? Do you count sheep? That's right. If you can't get to sleep, count sheep. It might help. Now let's talk about this word. This is fish. One fish, two fish, three fish. Don't say fishes. The singular is the same as the plural. Example, you can catch a lot of fish with a net. It's faster that way. Let's practice. Can you catch a lot of fish with a net? That's right, you can catch a lot of fish with a net. Remember, don't say fishes. Fish is the plural. And these are deer. One deer, two deer, three deer. Don't say deers. The singular and the plural are the same. Example, there are a lot of deer in the forest. Let's practice. Are there a lot of deer in the forest? That's right, there are a lot of deer in the forest. And our last one is shrimp. One shrimp, two shrimp, three shrimp. How about a dozen shrimp? That's 12 shrimp. Remember, don't say shrimps. The singular and the plural are the same. And I'm hungry. I would like a dozen shrimp. That's 12. And remember, don't say a dozen of shrimp. There's no of, just a dozen shrimp. So example, I want a dozen shrimp. What about you? Do you want a dozen shrimp? Very good. Now let's talk about nouns that change in pronunciation to make them plural. We don't put S on the word, we change the pronunciation more. For example, this is a goose. You can have one goose. But what if it's two? We don't say gooses, we say geese. These are Canadian geese. These geese are from Canada, so we call them Canadian geese. So one goose and two geese. Let's practice. Are these Canadian geese? That's right, these are Canadian geese. Don't say gooses, say geese. And this word, mouse, you have one mouse or 1, 2, 3 mice. Don't say mouses, 2 mice, 3 mice, 4 mice. The pronunciation changes for the plural. Let's practice. I'm scared of mice. What about you? Are you scared of mice? Very good. And this word, tooth. You have one tooth or many teeth. Use the long E sound like green beans. Teeth. The T makes the t, release T sound, t. And the last sound is f. Make air with your tongue and your top teeth. Again, t, teeth. 32 teeth. That's how many teeth you're supposed to have. I don't have 32 teeth. I think I have 30 teeth. What about you? How many teeth do you have? Very good. And this word, foot. I have 1 foot? No, I have 2 feet. I have 2 feet. It's also a unit of measurement in the United States. 1 foot is 12 inches. So 2 feet is 24 inches. But on my body, I have 2 feet. What about you? How many feet do you have? 2, I hope. Good job. And this word, child. Use the long I like high and like, child. But if I have more than one, I don't say childs, I say children. Use the short I sound like this is, children. And the DR makes the J sound like jump and juice, plus the R, jr, children. There are 4 children. Let's practice. How many children are there? That's right, there are 4 children. And this word, person. You have 1 person and more than one, you say people. 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, and 5 people. I see 5 people. Let's practice. How many people do you see? That's right, I see 5 people. Now let's talk about this word, man. Use the open an, like fan and can. Man. 1 man and 2 men. Use the short S sound like red and 10. Men. 1 man and 2 men. 3 men. There are 3 men talking. Let's practice. How many men are there talking? That's right, there are 3 men talking. And the last one is this, woman. You have 1 woman. Use the sound like good and book. Woman. The second syllable is relaxed and closed. Woman. 1 woman. But I see 3. 3 women. Not womans. It's women. Use the short I sound for both syllables. I, like this is. Women. Women. There are 3 women. Let's practice. How many women are there? That's right, there are 3 women. So remember, we have a lot of irregular plurals. Some words we don't change at all. The singular and the plural are the same. And some words we change the pronunciation and we do not put S. We need to know them all. They're all common words. Thank you for watching and keep watching for more.
Today we're going to learn how to use dozen, thousand, and other numbers like these correctly.
And we're going to point out some common mistakes that we need to avoid, like this one.
This is a dozen of eggs.
So let's see how to use dozen correctly. A dozen is 12. For 1, we say a dozen. It's 1 unit, but it's 12 things. So example, a dozen roses. We cannot say a dozen of roses. Of cannot be used in this case. Only a dozen roses. Or you can say a dozen eggs. Or a dozen donuts. It means 12. What if you have more than 12? Okay, if you have 24, you can say 2 dozen. I have 2 dozen roses. Or 3 dozen, 4 dozen, 5 dozen. But we cannot use S here. I cannot say dozens. Even though it's more than 1 dozen, we cannot put S on dozen. It has to stay singular. 5 dozen roses. 3 dozen roses. So remember, 2 dozen roses, well, that's 24 roses. 3 dozen roses, that's 36 roses. So, can I ever say dozens? Can I ever use the connector of? Yes, you can. If there is no number, you can use dozens of. There are dozens of parks in my neighborhood. There are dozens of parks in my city. That means 36 parks, maybe 48 parks. There are dozens of parks in my city. Let's practice. Do you have a dozen roses?
Yes, I have a dozen roses.
Does she have a dozen roses? That's right, she has a dozen roses. Let's practice. Do you need to buy 2 dozen eggs?
Yes, I need to buy 2 dozen eggs.
Does she need to buy 2 dozen eggs? That's right, she needs to buy 2 dozen eggs. Very good. Let's practice. Did you buy a dozen donuts this morning?
Yes, I bought a dozen donuts this morning.
Did she buy a dozen donuts this morning? That's right, she bought a dozen donuts this morning. Very good. Let's practice. Are there dozens of parks in your city?
Yeah, there are dozens of parks in my city.
Are there dozens of parks in her city? That's right, there are dozens of parks in her city. Very good. And these rules that we learned about dozen and how to use dozen correctly also work for other numbers like 100, 1,000, million, billion, and even trillion. Let's look at 100 first. Example, $100. If I have 2, 3, $400, I cannot use S and say hundreds. I have to keep it in singular form, 100, $500. And remember, we cannot use of. I cannot say 500 of dollars. $500 only. Example, I bought a new sofa. It cost $700. So, can I ever say hundreds? Can I use the preposition of? Yes, if there is no number. Example, hundreds of houses were damaged in the storm. There's no number, 2, 3, 4, 5, just hundreds. Hundreds of houses were damaged in the storm. Let's practice. Did you buy a new sofa?
Yeah, I bought a new sofa.
How much did it cost?
It cost $700.
Did she buy a new sofa? How much did it cost? That's right, she bought a new sofa and it cost $700. Very good. Let's practice. How many houses were damaged in the storm?
Hundreds of houses were damaged in the storm.
How many houses were damaged in the storm? That's right, hundreds of houses were damaged in the storm. Very good. Let's take a look at 1,000. That's right, 1,000 is in a singular form when you have numbers. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 100,000. Example, you can't buy a car today for less than $20,000. It stays in the singular form, I cannot say thousands, and there's no preposition of. You can't buy a new car for less than $20,000. Can I say thousands? Yes, you can say thousands of if there's no number. Example, it took thousands of hours to repair the damage. Again, it took thousands of hours to repair the damage. Let's practice. Can you buy a new car for less than $20,000?
No, you can't buy a new car for less than $20,000.
Can you buy a new car for less than $20,000? That's right, you can't buy a new car for less than $20,000. Very good. Let's practice. Did it take thousands of hours to repair all the damage?
Yes, it took thousands of hours to repair all the damage.
Did it take thousands of hours to repair all the damage? That's right, it took thousands of hours to repair all the damage. Very good. What about million? That's right, million too. I cannot say millions. I keep it in a singular form. 3 million, 4 million, 10 million, 100 million. It's always in a singular form. Example, 2 million trees were planted last year. 2 million trees. I cannot say millions if I have a number. And I cannot use the preposition of. Only 2 million trees were planted last year. Can I ever say millions? Sure, if there's no number. Millions of people, millions of dollars. Example, millions of people are going to vote in the next election. Millions of people are going to vote. Let's practice. How many trees were planted last year in this state?
2 million trees were planted in the state last year.
How many trees were planted last year in this state? That's right. 2 million trees were planted in this state last year. Very good. Let's practice. Are millions of people going to vote in the next election?
Yeah, millions of people are going to vote in the next election.
Are millions of people going to vote in the next election? That's right. Millions of people are going to vote in the next election. Very good.
Thank you for watching.
And if you want to get your questions or comments noticed, you can join our channel and become a member. And again, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.